The best running back pick in every round of redraft. That is what we're going to do this week on RotoViz OT. We are going to start off today, do those early rounds. We're going to come back for the late rounds for the 0RB kind of target range. That's what we're going to do on the second show of the week here on RotoViz OT. I want to give a quick plug at the start. I am going to be recording with Hayden Winks today as we record this OT on Monday, and they are going to come out later this week on the RotoViz Fantasy Football podcast. We're going to talk through some of the fun topics that he's been posting about over at Underdog on those editions of the Fantasy Football podcast. But Shawn, today we are talking running backs and which ones you need to draft throughout the course of your draft to win your championships in 2025. Recently, a lot of best ball shows here at RotoViz OT. I know Shawn and Ben on Stealing Bananas have talked a little bit more of the redraft stuff, but we're going to dive in today and look at this from a redraft perspective. There will be some differences in ADP versus what you're looking to do in best ball, but obviously the player targets will remain quite similar based on their profiles. Shawn, I often joke that, we're getting closer to the NFL season and you like to come back and say that it's the best time of the year. So we probably should just get that out of the way. I think we're about 7 weeks away from the NFL season. Training camp is starting to tick up. There's lots of news starting to filter out. How are you feeling as we start off training camp here?
Good, Colm. It is the best time of the year. We are days away from August. We've got the big dynasty startups. We've got your FFPC main events. And most importantly, we got those leagues with your friends, your coworkers, your college buddies, friends and family. You've got to win those leagues. And we will have you set up very nicely for that here on the show. And Colm, we have training camp news. Couldn't be in a better position. It is the best time of the year. Can't wait to talk about running backs.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So we're going to kick off here. We're going to share the FFPC redraft dashboard. We have the ADP filtered for about the last week for the FFPC main event and the big gorilla. Pulling it up here, Shawn, in terms of the running backs going, we have Bijan Robinson, Jamar Gibbs in the first 3 picks, and then it goes down as far as Saquon Barkley, followed by Christian McCaffrey at 7 and 8, followed by Jeanty at pick 10. So 5 running backs through the first 12 picks. Hit me with your favorite selection, and then I'll see if I go in a different direction.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little bit of hopefully a wild card here. One of the things that will show up in the big HN article that I'm always teasing, and we'll see, Colm, if HN ends up being the pick here in a couple of moments for round 2. But the EP numbers for the top of the board, the top 6 picks, and what I really mean by that are the top 6 finishers, right? The guys who end up being RB1 through RB6. The EP numbers for that group over the last few years has really fallen. And part of the reason, and maybe the biggest reason for that, is because the receiving EP numbers have fallen and certainly have not been offset by the rushing numbers. The rushing numbers down in 2023. The receiving numbers way down in 2024. I had a chance to record with Scott Barrett recently on his show talking about stupid questions, right? And, crazy scenarios. What if a certain path ends up being the one that we go down for the 2025 season, exploring some of these things that are kind of bouncing around in the back of our heads, but you might be too embarrassed to say out loud. Colm, people know that we are not embarrassed to say these out loud. And my question was, what if Ashton Jeanty ends up carrying 350 times, earns 100 targets, and is the only back to really get anywhere close to those numbers, right? The top EP for a back last season was from the really pretty washed Alvin Kamara. Bijan Robinson almost a full point behind him. Then you get into that range with Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon. I mean, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Jahmyr Gibbs, the guys with these insane efficiency numbers simultaneously don't have they just don't have the overall work or the high value touches to put up a monster McCaffrey season. So the most straightforward answer would simply be, you got to bank on a Christian McCaffrey, even though mostly that has come back to really bite you over the last number of years. But you do also have this option of a rookie playing in what should be a dramatically better Las Vegas Raiders backfield. And when you look at Jeanty and what he has done the last several seasons, it's just pretty crazy, right? Even when you adjust for his level of schedule, opponent, what have you. I mean, the numbers that he put up, where last year he's at 33% evasion, his yards after contact per attempt jumped from already insane 4.2 to 4.7. In the 2023 season, he averaged 3.9 yards per route, which was tied for Jahmyr Gibbs for the second best number among running backs in the last 5 years. Gibbs did that in 2021. I mean, we're talking about Jeanty as someone who is fantastic in every area and put up these extreme workhorse numbers. You expect him to be a workhorse. You expect him, Colm, I expect him to have the highest expected points in the NFL this year at the running back position. The question will be, where does he fall in that 0 to really 6 range in terms of fantasy points over expected per game? The numbers that we're seeing from those guys like Henry, uh, Barkley, and Gibbs, if he can put up a 2 or 3, which is certainly still going to be a challenge, the defenses will be focused on him at least to an extent. He does have Bowers to distract a little bit. But if he doesn't end up coming in that sort of 0-ish range, right? If he can be better on efficiency than guys like Kamara and Mixon, then suddenly you're talking about being the best pick. So he's going to have some challenges to get there, but man, it's really set up nicely for him.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting when we look at, the rookies being in the first round here, and particularly, with Jeanty. You've set it up there with his, college profile and the situation that he finds himself now with the Raiders. So I back all that up. The other part you mentioned was the Christian McCaffrey part of it. Like, if we knew he was obviously, if we knew he was fully healthy, he wouldn't be going at the 8th pick. But it's just that little bit. There's some question marks around some of these first round running backs where the upside is very, very clear, but the downside, like with a Christian McCaffrey re-aggravating that injury here in the next, like, let's say 8 weeks, is pretty catastrophic for your fantasy lineup. When we looked at the ones that are going the pick 1 or pick 2 and pick 3, that is Robinson and Gibbs, I'm going to find it very, very hard in a draft where I have one of the first 3 picks to make that selection to pick either Robinson or Gibbs. But I do think the upside case for all these guys in the first round, for the situation that would happen for Gibbs if he did become like the potential workhorse for the Lions, is huge. So if we're not looking at the Jeanty at the rookie and somebody who I could see myself maybe falling into at the back of the round if all the other kind of priority selections are gone at the other positions, he would definitely be more in play based on the cost as well of being able to get him. But I just think the way we seen the end of last season play out with Gibbs, if we ever get a full run where he is the guy here in this offense, and maybe that's another year away, but that would be the most excited I think about anybody at the running back position that I would have been in quite some time. Moving into the second round, we started off from Devin Etienne, who you mentioned a moment ago, running back 6 at the 201, moving into Derrick Henry as the RB7 in the middle of the round. The end of the round by ADP finishes off with Bucky Irving, Jonathan Taylor, and Chase Brown. We'll leave Josh Jacobs, he's at the 301. We'll leave him for the third round. But Shawn, out of those guys, I think we have had the spoiler here already. Let me know why it's Etienne.
Well, I'm going to go off the script a little bit for you here,
Let's go.
and take a different name. Etienne, obviously very exciting. I've said a number of places at this point that I think you can look at him as early as the 102. That offense is going to be bad, right? And they just had a guard injury, is my understanding. That, who knows how much that will set them back. Kevin has written these wonderful team breakdowns over at the site. If you don't have a sub, those, that series is worth it alone. Not only does he help you really understand deeply every single team, but also helps you understand how so many of the tools work. We get questions from time to time from subscribers about the best way to use those. He utilizes them throughout this process, this exercise, showing you what they really can do and the information that they can help you get, then understand, what have you. So, having said that, I mean, his article on the Dolphins is pretty concerning, right? And this is an overall roster in decay. in part because of an unwillingness to play for the long term and manage the salary cap properly. So we have some risk there. We've also talked about him a lot. I want to go with Jonathan Taylor, who in 2021 scored 377 points. He was the number 2 back that season in fantasy points over expected. We've emphasized that a lot in terms of just how important it is in the current landscape to be able to add efficiency on top. Scored 75 points from an efficiency perspective that year. We know he is a big play back. He was also able to catch 40 passes for 360 yards in that season, and we're set up a little bit more in that direction if in fact Daniel Jones does win the job. My understanding is that so far through camp, Richardson looked absolutely awful in the first couple, then had a good practice. It's certainly not impossible that he does win the job. And if he does, I think that Jonathan Taylor is valued appropriately. But if he doesn't, if Daniel Jones wins, then Jonathan Taylor should probably be in the late first round. You get a sense of what he might be able to do, on a full season when he's a little bit healthier, in a stretch where maybe Daniel Jones is the guy. Now, the really big game that he had toward the end of last year was with Richardson, but then with Richardson out, he followed that up with 2 games over 25. Week 16, 17, 18 last season, he averaged 31 points per game. Now, obviously, we're not talking about that for a full season, but when you have a back like Taylor, and again, Taylor was actually one of the players who did finish up toward the top of the EP leaderboard last year. This potential to put work and efficiency together, I think he's just the absolute crush pick at this point. He's someone that you and I selected
Yeah.
in our recent best ball draft. And, we weren't 100% on the same page with that, but I guess I increasingly feel comfortable and excited about him as the pick, basically as soon as Drake London is off the board. And I have had Taylor ahead of Derrick Henry in my rankings. If it's a situation where Henry is still available, I will occasionally still take him just to make sure I have some exposure to a guy who is so safe within the context of an offense that's going to score so many points. I do think, though, that straight up Jonathan Taylor should be ahead of him there.
The one question I'm going to follow up on there, we did have a few people reach out through different ways of communication about Bucky Irving, somebody who we spent pretty much all of last offseason talking about, and then this offseason we've kind of been in stealth mode where we haven't really talked about him at all. For me, with where kind of the way you talked it through there with the Drake London kind of tier, I've mentioned a lot on the show about how much I like George Kittle. There is kind of an area off the draft there where the cost, I'm just kind of unwilling to be targeting Bucky as the priority option there. Love, the profile and what he did coming in. And obviously there was a lot of question marks with the testing and how he would perform at the NFL level. But you also have to factor that in now with the conversation when he's at, the late second round and how his body will hold up in the NFL and so on, and the cost that you're paying at this particular point. Is it a little bit strange, Shawn, for somebody who was one of our favorite players to draft last year to be kind of almost not on the board in 2025?
I don't know that that's completely the case. One of the things that was very exciting for him is that he did flip Rachaad White from a receiving perspective late in the season. If you don't have the week 14 game where he is banged up, plays, but only gets in 16% of the snaps, then that stretch from week 12 after their bye through week 18, he was utterly dominant. And I think that that is probably the strongest indication, or it gives you a feel of what you should expect in 2025. The thing that we do have to keep in mind is that they have a lot of playmakers in the passing game. They are going to emphasize those guys when appropriate. They do have very, we're not White believers, but he is still a player who can be effective as a receiving back if those touches are split in any way and that workload is siphoned off of Irving. Then you have the lack of ceiling issue that you're starting to deal with. And then Sean Tucker, we're talking about pure rushing, is electric. And so you probably can't get to the type of workload that you truly need. The other thing, Colm, is that we have to be a little bit concerned still about some of the things that were concerns last year. I have a big piece coming out on Chase Brown looking at what you should do in terms of chasing your 0 RB hits. And certainly in Brown's case, I think we can be very enthusiastic. He is also valued just right in this range, right? Where we have Bucky as the 210, Taylor as the 211, Chase Brown as the 212. I think because of team context and long speed, I still have a little bit more comfort or confidence in Brown not only being pretty safe at that spot, but also having some range to really outperform. Where I think that Bucky is probably more of a late 2, early 3 type of pick. And so you're picking a guy that you don't necessarily expect to beat his ADP, which even early is what we're looking to do, right? When we're drafting in round 6, we're looking for a guy who next year is going to go in round 2. When you're drafting at the end of round 2, you're looking for somebody you think is going to be drafted next year at the 105. There's also just a little bit of an element where even though the general conclusion on Brown is that, yeah, he probably still works there, we want to show some restraint in terms of chasing our 0 RB hits. One of the things that I work through in the piece is just what's the follow up for these guys who hit from those ranges. And not surprisingly, it's not all that frequent that we get hits from that area of the draft, but it's also the case that those guys are going to have a little bit more trouble sustaining than someone like a Gibbs or a Barkley or a McCaffrey. You know, if Ashton Jeanty hits and has the same type of season that Bucky had last year, which in some cases would be disappointing, but kind of thinking about his week 12 forward, right, which is where he's being valued. If Jeanty has that for the full season, then you're not going to have some of the same concerns. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have guys who are able to back it up, right? Sort of in the time period before I was really looking at, you have Arian Foster hit from an undrafted position. You have guys like Aaron Jones and Austin Eckler become massive impact backs. So, again, like with the case for Chase Brown, I think Bucky is very good. I don't think there was anything smoke and mirrors about it. You look at his collegiate numbers and everything he did last year from an evasion perspective, that ability to change directions without losing speed. So you can beat someone horizontally and then get north south. That's the thing that the big backs who have a lot of evasion, and maybe their evasion is sort of skewed to broken tackles. But when you lose the speed going sideways and the evasion gets neutralized, certainly not completely, it's better than going down, but it's neutralized to an extent, don't get what Bucky Irving gives you. At the same time, I think it's just a case where he's pretty effectively valued, right? That's probably his true price. We want to look at someone like a Jonathan Taylor who has already been a 370-point scorer, already been the RB1, and is probably really set up a little bit better in terms of context.
Moving on to round 3, we get Josh Jacobs, then Kyron Williams, Breece Hall, Omarion Hampton, and then Kenneth Walker. So we have 5 names here. Shawn, hit me with the preferred option in round 3.
Colm, this one is a little tricky. I mean, it's going to be Kenneth Walker, right? But let's instead focus on this situation with Omarion Hampton. You have a player who is obviously drafted to be the guy, right? You think about Najee Harris. We have the situation there where he may miss a lot of time, may not be, I don't know about ready for the season, but he's not going to have had the chance to really solidify himself as the veteran that Hampton then has to jump over. And I've had Hampton ranked ahead of these prices all season, and for him to still be behind them with the new context. I think one of the things that you are looking at a little bit here is that drafters should be aware of the fact that the Chargers and the Steelers, two offenses that want to be very run heavy, could actually not be that great for the running back position. So if that's the concern that people have with Hampton, I think that that's probably pretty perceptive. At the same time, we're talking about Hampton being a guy who has side, who has long speed, who is very young, which is something that not a lot of players from this rookie class really across positions have, in part because of what the context has been in college football for the last several years. I wouldn't put that all on the prospects, but when you see someone like Hampton who's been so good, so young, has the 1,500 receiving yards in 2023, He has the 83% dominator. He has a 2,000 yard from scrimmage season last year, improving those peripherals. We talked about Jeanty's numbers. Hampton, 4.2 yards after contact in 2023. I mean, this is someone who had a 14% boom rate. Doing those things when you also have massive raw numbers is a little bit different than doing it, say, like as a Jarquez Hunter, right? So we love Hunter. He's in a situation where I think he is undervalued. But Hampton, when you have the youth, when you have the explosion, when you have the size, he ran 218 routes last season, caught 38 passes, gained 363 yards, broke 11 additional tackles. The BSS gives him comps like Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, Cam Akers. Obviously, Akers has been a little bit disappointing. And now anybody who has come to the NFL recently is like, I mean, I've been not impressed by Dalvin Cook. Colm, Dalvin Cook had one of the best fantasy seasons in recent memory. Breece Hall is a big play waiting to happen. Hampton could end up taking almost all the touches for a team that is going to be a dynamic running team off of what they get there from Justin Herbert, from those receivers, from that offensive line. You might have a little bit of a ceiling that you don't want for a third round pick, but if he gets some of these breakaway plays, and again, we're talking about someone with a 90th percentile freak score, a 96th percentile explosion score, you're going to be very happy that you had him at a third round price when just feel like in almost all situations in the past, and we've talked about how round 2 actually is a very good round this year. Round 3 is generally not. He should be at the top of that round. Hampton drafters, I think, are going to be pretty excited.
You mentioned as well Breece Hall being a big play waiting to happen. Hall is one of the players so far this draft season that I felt like he could be one that really hurts me because I haven't been able to click on him very often. And like if things go in the right direction for him and playing with Justin Fields, maybe if it opens up some things in the running game. Yeah, I'm a little bit afraid of passing on Breece, but Hampton, very, very interesting in the situation. Plus, unfortunately, the stuff with Harris for him, but that's obviously a positive in the box for Hampton. Shawn, you mentioned Kenneth Walker being the answer, and obviously then we pivoted. We've talked quite a bit about Walker. People may look at Walker from what he's done in his career so far and feel like, he may even be overpriced in this range based on, his career numbers. And RB1 27% of the time, RB2 37%, and 37% RB3. It has been up and down a lot of the way through out his years in the NFL. Started off last year quite strong with running back 1 weeks and most of the weeks through week 7, but did miss week 2 and week 3. But Shawn, I think the part that really fits into this, we've kind of been talking about it for quite some time, is the offensive scheme change and how that may, track better with Walker's skill set versus what we've been able to, see him in the past having to kind of move laterally rather than vertically behind that line of scrimmage. Do you want to highlight Walker, or will we save that for another day?
Yeah, we can save him, but again, I would just point to both the peripherals and the actual scoring from last season in a year where he's considered to be a pretty big disappointment. If he doesn't get a little bit dinged up, I mean, he's going at the end of round 1.
Yeah. So no, I just wanted to highlight it because when we're talking the best picks, we can't say he is and then skip past it. Moving on to round 4, we do have James Cook, Alvin Kamara, Chuba Hubbard. It's only 3 names going here, so a lot less selections. Maybe we'll pair 4 and 5 together for this because in round 5 we have James Conner, TreVeyon Henderson, RJ Harvey, and DeAndre Swift. Feel free to highlight somebody in that round 4 group if you want, but if the round 5 is where your preference is, fire away.
Well, I think Colin, the best pick in round 4 would simply be taking TreVeyon Henderson. And so he is going in the middle of 5. We'll see what we get, after training camp is really going there. Is he going to be the guy? Is he going to be the driver of this passing game? I think that he will be in the top 3 for running back receptions this season. This is a guy who is so athletic that even though he's not a big tackle breaker, he has very high yards after contact. You compare him to Quinshon Judkins, who actually went a little bit ahead of him in the reality draft last year. He averaged he averaged exactly 2 yards per carry more. He averaged more after contact. They have a situation where they didn't need him. Ohio State as a receiver, but he had at least 125 routes in 2021, 2023, 2024. Had 94 air yards last season. He finished his college career with 853 receiving yards. You put that in a situation where, I mean, he's got the long speed. Next Gen has him as the most athletic back from this class. I don't know that that is the level I would be willing to go there, but when you look at what he did instantly in college as this freshman phenom and mega recruit, and then you track the entire history there, I think that he will play more as a true runner than maybe people are expecting. Ramondre Stevenson has been good at times. The peripherals last year were not as bad as maybe just the raw performance when you tune into Patriots games made it seem like, but he does have that fumbling problem. He has not been as dynamic in the recent past as he was when he flashed a bit early in his career. He's basically just a guy. And when you look at the Patriots and you need that explosiveness out of the backfield because they have very, very little talent. The Patriots are going to be in a group bottom 5 overall skill position talent. It's got to come from somewhere, and it's most likely to come from easily the most electric offensive player on your team.
Moving in then to round 6 at this particular point, and we're looking at Joe Mixon, who obviously news coming out over the weekend regarding his health status, injury status. It's kind of up in the air at the moment, it seems, working through an issue that was working against him last season at certain points as well. So Joe Mixon, this ADP I would expect will move down pretty quickly. Kaleb Johnson then at RB24, Aaron Jones at the back of the round, paired with David Montgomery. Then we will tie again round 7 and with the summary of Isaiah Pacheco at the start of the round, Tony Pollard in the middle of the round, and then Brian Robinson at the 12th pick of round 7 at RB29. So 29 running backs through this particular range. I'm sure this isn't your favorite area of the draft to select running backs, but you're on the clock. The rule is, Shawn, you have to pick a running back here. Who's your favorite pick in round 6 or 7 at the running back position?
Yeah, if the rule is you have to make a pick, I'm going to make a pick, and it is going to be Kaleb Johnson. People who've been following the content, the shows through the offseason know that we really like Jaylen Warren because of the mix that he brings to the table, a plus receiver, maybe the best back in terms of combining broken tackles and forced missed tackles in the entire NFL. He's a good fit for what the Steelers want to do. And also just this, again, point that the Steelers may be very, very bad for running back scoring. They're talking about Kenneth Gainwell and how excited they are to have him as in the receiving role. This is just a situation where this offense wants to destroy the upside to really cannibalize high value touches within the offense. And it doesn't matter how sort of gross and running back based your offense is. If you intentionally split everything out in a way that doesn't work for individual players, I keep going back to the fact that Tyler Algier had a 1,000 yard rushing season as a rookie and did not average 10 fantasy points per game. You look at that with Kaleb Johnson and you're thinking, okay, well, I was pretty sure he was going to get to 1,000 rushing yards, but if you're telling me he's going to do it and still not be playable, then why are you encouraging this pick at all? Well, the other guys simply are not very good in this range. And Kaleb Johnson, even though he might be a little bit exaggerated, he was fantastic in 2024, right? Leads the Big Ten in rushing yards and touchdown, 6.4 yards per attempt, 3.9 yards after contact, 25% evasion rate, a great mix of peripherals, the broken tackles, the forced missed tackles, both of those things there. He's a first down machine. He caught 22 passes. He had one of the best receiver ratings. So when I'm thinking about Jaylen Warren too, I'm also thinking, Kaleb Johnson could be the same problem for him that Warren could be for Johnson, even before you get into these other players that they're going to use. Kaleb Johnson was among the best backs in the country in terms of receiving yards after contact. 7 multi-TD games. The opponents knew he was coming out of, still dominated them. 1,725 yards in just 12 games, right? You got to think of the number of games that these guys got to play, the ones who end up going all the way to the national championship game, their full season numbers are just very different. They've played a different kind of season. Had a great backfield dominator rating. He is not a big time athlete, probably, but he did actually have a long run where he had a really high mile per hour based on the college tracking. So some of the athletic issues would not be as big of a deal in a class that wasn't so deep and so athletic. And so he's getting kind of compared to this class, at least in terms of, I think, even my thought process on it. Again, my concern is basically not the talent, it's the situation, both teammates and overall offense. But I think you've got to pick the most exciting, the highest upside pure talent at this spot if the other options are bad. And Colm, I mean, it's very possible. I just put out the Kansas City Chiefs breakdown, almost 10,000 words. I mean, it was everything I think is relevant about the Chiefs. And Isaiah Pacheco is basically just a footnote, right? Because he misses a big chunk of last season. He's not very good when he comes back, but you have to be fair to the player and understand that that was an injury related aspect. But the Chiefs were also one of the most pedestrian rushing offenses the previous year that people get excited about him as a result of. They were an offense that was completely unexplosive at the running back position, not a lot of 10-yard plus runs. Having said all of that, if you want context, I think you would take the Chiefs starter there. Kaleb Johnson, Isaiah Pacheco, basically call them draft a different position, draft wide receivers in this range.
Yeah, this is a tough stretch of running back picks. So the key so far for people who are listening, they're probably like, you picked pretty much the rookies in every round. Generally, when we're looking at these drafts, when we're looking at the younger players with the higher upside, and we pair through these running back picks, that really does fall with the RBs through these early rounds. So while people may feel running backs not as safe as some of these veteran names, obviously we did pick Jonathan Taylor in the second round, as Shawn highlighted. But yeah, some exciting rookie talent, as we already knew, entering the NFL this year. So that is going to do it through those opening 7 rounds. We are going to come back because round 8 is, I think, where it really starts to get interesting for some of these favorite running back targets that we're going to have in those kind of 0 RB rounds in 2025. People may have noticed over the last week, if you are watching this on YouTube, you can now sign up for the YouTube memberships and get these videos 24 hours before they are released in general. So you can check that out if you're watching these over on the YouTube side. But that is where we're going to close it up for this episode. My name is Colm Kelly. You can follow me on social media at Overtime. My co-host is Shawn Siegele. And until we are back, have a good one.